We are completely broken to pieces. After going through such heartache, through seeing so many of our friends, family members, close and far, having left us in horrible circumstances, after being confined to our homes, not being able to interact socially with our friends in a human way. We now, after experiencing in the month of Iyar on Lag BaOmer, a terrible collapse that took the lives of 45 of our brothers. After another collapse in Jerusalem, amongst the Hasidim of Stolin, the next month, the month of Sivan, the month of Matan Torah, the month of the giving of the Torah, we now arrive at the eve of the 3 weeks, and we find ourselves experiencing something that hits home, but hits home in a literal sense. I'm now speaking to you from Collins Avenue, on the same side of the street, on the same ocean, just over 100 streets from where the catastrophe, the disaster happened. We all, over this last year and a half and more, have heard so much negativity. The question is, how do we cope? How do we stay human in a situation where at the same time we want to be human, we want to be sensitive, we want to actually feel the pain for our other, we want to feel what the other is feeling and show compassion. On the other hand, there's such an overflow of negative information, such an overflow of disasters and catastrophes and pain. How are we able to reconcile feeling the pain of another each time, and at the same time standing on our own 2 feet and not losing it, and not just, God forbid, giving up and saying, where are we going? Maimonides, in the laws of Ta'anit, in the laws that discuss the fasts, says the following. The reason why we fast during the national days of mourning and fasting in the Jewish calendar, it says, "Mitzvat aseh min haTorah liz'ok u'lareah b'chatzotzot al kol tzara shetavo al hatzibur." There is a mitzvah to take out the trumpets, to cry out whenever there is pain that inflicts the assembly, that inflicts the world. We cannot stay insensitive to what's happening. And it says over there, and this is a way of doing teshuvah, that crying out, that siren that tells us it's time to wake up. This is one of the paths to be able to return to Hashem. At the moment that the Jewish people will cry out and will blow our trumpets, Yed'u hakol, everyone will know, says Maimonides, shebiglal ma'aseim harayim ura lahem, v'zeh hu sheigrom lahem la'asir hatzara me'alehem. We will understand that There is no coincidence. Everything that we see in the world is a message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a message from God. And we have to wake up. We have to be able to change our consciousness. And the Rambam continues in Halacha Gimel in the laws of Ta'anit, of fasting. And if a person is not going to react, if a person is not going to shake himself up when he sees the events, they'll just say that this is nothing more than the human condition. There are catastrophes, natural catastrophes that happen, and they happen often, and we see them on the news all the time. Another natural catastrophe. Oh, this time it just happened to hit home. Then a person, Maimonides continues and says, this is a way that it is merciless, and it's a path that causes man to be so numb that he will not change. My dear friends, we are all hurting in a very, very deep pain. We're gathered here together today to try to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, and that's not really going to be the purpose. The only thing we can ask ourselves in a situation like this one is not what caused it, is what do we need to change? What is the consequence? What is the message to every single one of us? It's not here, we're not here to make ourselves guilty, God forbid, or point fingers. There's no fingers to be pointed. Every one of us has to see where we are holding. Where are we holding in our lives? We run all day. We are on social media day and night with so much information, so much need, such a great need to communicate with the world and to be updated with everything that is happening at every single moment of the day. In the process, we have lost touch with the human soul, the soul inside of every single one of us. We've lost touch with what's important in our lives. When we have such an event happen, the collapse of a whole building with 159 people, amongst them are brothers and sisters, over 30 of them. We have to say, 1 second, isn't it time to stop? To stop and to introspect and to think. In this world, everybody is running. We're all running after something. And we think we're going to get somewhere by running. It's time to stop, to close all our devices, to let the world be silent. When Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, lost his 2 sons, his reaction was silence. Vayidom Aaron. Aaron became completely silent. There is something very special about silence. We need to silence our minds. In a place where there is silence, the voice of God can speak to us. In a place of noise, in a place that's always busy, when our minds are always occupied, preoccupied, we are not able to truly connect to our essence, to our purpose. It seems that our world, everybody around us, has been led in this social media revolution where we don't take the time to stop, to pause, and to say enough is enough. I need to connect to something deeper. One of my favorite questions when we speak about redemption, liberation, freedom is, when did the coming out of Egypt happen? Some want to say that it happened when Moses faced Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." Others say when it was at the moment of the 10 plagues. But really it started much before that. It started when a bush was burning for days and everybody was oblivious. Everybody was too busy to look, contemplate, and ask themselves, what is happening? It doesn't make sense. How could you burn without being consumed? There was only one person, the leader of the Jewish people, Moses, a shepherd at the time, one which worked with his hands, but had his mind free to connect above. He looked, and the Torah teaches us, Asurana ve'er'e tamar'e agadol. He stepped back and he decided to contemplate and ask himself, what is happening? How is it possible for a bush to be in flames without being consumed? It is precisely at this moment that God appears to Moses. And what is the first thing that he says? He calls him by his name, Moshe, Moshe. The double expression of calling is an expression that shows that he was cherished at this time. You're stopping to think, to ask yourself a question, I cherish. But the first thing God tells him is, take off your shoes. What type of a message is this? Take off your shoes. The first encounter of Moses with God is take off your shoes. The Rebbe explains that the purpose of shoes are to desensitize the foot. Because when you walk barefoot, you feel all the stones and the different things which are on the floor. When you put a shoe on, you are desensitized. You are there and you don't have to feel the pain. Moshe Rabbeinu was asking himself a great question. He asked himself, how is it possible for a bush? There are magnificent trees which represent the sages, the educated one, the elite of the generation. They have a fire of love for God. How is it possible for a bush of thorns, a simple Jew, one which may be caught in the lowest level, to have a fire of love for God? To this, God tells him, Shal ne'alecha me'al raglecha, take off your shoes. Become sensitive and know that every Jew is the most precious thing to me. Is the most precious. The simplest Jew has a fire of connection with me. And then God gives him his mission. I want you to go and to tell the people the time of the redemption has come. Moshe Rabbeinu will then go and speak to the people and tell them just that. The time of your redemption has come. And the words of the Torah resonate so much. Velo sham'u al Moshe mikotzer ruach u'me'avoda kasha. The shortness of breath and the hard toil, the busyness of the Jews in the slavery of Egypt caused them not to be recipients, to be receptacles, to receive this information. The time of your redemption has come. What are you talking about? We are busy. We're putting out fires. We're in slavery. We don't have time for this nonsense. What are you trying to bring us to a world of illusions? We are slaves forever. Moshe Rabbeinu then asks God a question. And when I come to the Jewish people and they ask me a simple question, what is your name? Who sent me? What should I tell them? And God says, you'll tell them, I will be with them in the next exile, just like I was in this exile. Moses says, what do you mean? They're not gone. They're not out of this problem. You want to tell them they're going to be in another problem? Okay, no problem, Moshe. Tell them, I am with them and I will be with them. What was the discussion? What's happening over here? We know, according to Kabbalah and Chassidut, that every one of God's names represents another character trait. The name of Hashem, El, represents the kindness of God. Elohim represents the severity of God, the rigor of Hashem, the judgment of God. Hashem, Amonai, represents the aspect of mercy. Moshe Rabbeinu is looking at the suffering of the Jewish people. He's looking at the Jewish children being slaughtered. And he says to God, God, when they ask me, what's your name? What part of you exactly? Which aspect of you? Which character trait permits such horrific things to happen? I will have no words. What should I say? And to this, God answers, I am with them, imo anochi b'tzara. I am with them in their pain, in their sorrow. When the Jewish people cry, I cry with them. When the Jewish people suffer, I suffer with them. We have to know that when we see all these horrors happening before our eyes, God is with us. Not only God is with us, God suffers with us. How does he permit such things to happen? Well, the Talmud in Masechet Gittin says, Hein hein gvurotav shel HaKadosh Baruch. A part of being God is the fact that God can let man take his responsibilities and at the same time suffer the consequences. It's possible to give man, the freedom of choice, and people which are not good people to act in the way that they act. I'm out of the picture. God gives us the full responsibility. He gave us a world. He created a beautiful universe. And our responsibility, God says, le'ovda u'le'shomra. God says that he put the man, Adam HaRishon, in the world, in Gan Eden, in what is his garden. Le'ovda, to toil, to work on this land, u'le'shomra, and to keep the land, keep the universe, keep everything together. But how do we do it? What is the guide of our consciousness? What is the path that we're supposed to follow to maintain the world that God gave us? One day, some 5 years ago, my son was 8 years old. I was advised by a good friend that the best way to connect with our children is to have walks, not to expect anything from them, not to try to go in deep subjects, but just Have a walk and talk to your child. Let him express himself. Let him feel comfortable with you. It would be so refreshing if we did that indeed. And we disconnected from our phones and we were able to have that human interaction so that our children would not be so distressed by the fact that they don't have who to speak to or who to rely on. We were walking and my 8-year-old Shlomo Sheikhye turns to me and says, Daddy, today, I asked him, what did you study today in school? He said, the Mora, our teacher, Mora Chagit, taught us what it says in the Zohar. The Zohar says, Istakel be'oraita ubara alma. God looked in the Torah and he created the world. He created the universe. But Daddy, he says, God is the one that wrote the manual. He is the one that wrote the Torah. Why does he have to look in his Torah in order to create the world? I was left thinking a simple question, but a good question from a child that really wants to know. And every child wants to know. And at this moment, it came to me that God wanted to teach us by example. He wanted to teach us by example. He wanted to teach us that the way to be able to create his world was by looking in his Torah. You want to build your world. You want to keep my world. You want to build your family. You want to build yourself. There's no other way than by looking in God's Torah. There's a major difference, it says in Hayom Yom, between the laws that are created by man and the laws that are created by God. The laws that are created by man change from country to country, from year to year, from presidency to presidency, from election to election. Things change, they readapt, they are reformatted to adapt and to please the people with a speech that they want to hear. And therefore, they are not the ultimate truth. The Torah has accompanied us for the last 3,333 years without changing an iota. If one letter is cracked, if one letter doesn't touch and touches another, the whole Torah is no good. Everything is precise, everything is real, and therefore the same Sefer Torah that Moses wrote before passing is the same Sefer Torah that we read this morning, Monday morning, Parashat Pinchas. My friends, let me share with you a story. One of my favorite stories, and I think one of the deepest lessons we can give our children, and something that we need to apply to our lives, and especially in this time. The Rebbe Rashab, the Fifth Lobotomy Rebbe, invited his son, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the previous Lobotomy Rebbe and father-in-law of our Rebbe. When he was 13 years old, he invited him for a discussion. And he told him, my son, today is your bar mitzvah. I have 3 requests from you. The son attentively was listening, and he was ready to receive the message. My son, I ask from you one thing. Number 1, don't fool yourself. Number 2, do not fool others. Number 3, do not let others fool you. Let's examine what he was asking. We know the Talmud in Shabbat discusses the difference there is between emet, the truth, and sheker, a lie. Emet is Aleph, Mem, Tav, the 3 letters which have solid foundations. Sheker, Shin, Kuf, Resh only have 1 leg, and therefore it doesn't have solid foundation. Emet is something which is solid and eternal. And that's why the Aleph is the first letter, the Mem is the middle letter, and the Tav is the last letter. Because if it's true in all situations from beginning to end. Shin, Kuf, Resh, a lie, the opposite of truth, doesn't stand. It doesn't stand strong. It crumbles. It's destroyed. It will fall eventually. And the letters Shin, Kuf, Resh are letters that follow one another to teach us that lies are more accessible than the truth. For the truth, you really have to go very far and you have to exert yourself to look for the truth. Number 1, don't fool yourself. What was he saying? We saw that the structures, for the last 3 months, we've experienced the destruction of the foundations. It seems to be that this is a reflection of what's happening in our world. The emet of the world is not standing. They recently discovered that in 2018, when they did an inspection of the Champlain Towers, there were problems with the foundations. But it's okay, it was signed off. You'll certainly take care of it. Let's push it to later. They want to say today that they was just about to do it, just 3 years later. And a few seconds too late for all these families. As we see that the foundations of the world are crumbling down, we have to look around ourselves and ask us, what are our foundations? Imagine the person that listened to this person signing off. And in his mind, it's okay, he was numbed. He was numbed by the illusion that everything will be all right. There are no consequences to our actions. We can just brush it off and nothing will happen. How little did he know that we would live such a disaster and a catastrophe. How many times in our life do we see things happening around us and we accept them? We say it's okay in the name of being politically correct, in the name of tolerance. It's one thing to be tolerant. It's one thing to be good. It's another thing to introduce in our homes things which have nothing to do with us. It is important, number one, not to fool ourselves. Where am I really standing in my life? What have I accomplished? What is my purpose? What is my calling? God made us different because he gave every single one of us a specific mission and a specific potential. And that's what King Solomon teaches. God gave everybody a different aspiration to build the world together. Everyone can't be an accountant. Everybody can't be a lawyer. Everybody can't be a plumber. We need every single person. We need everyone. I got a call from France this morning. And a good friend of mine, Yaakov Zerbib, left me a beautiful message. Touched me to my core. He said, Shy, we're here in France, but you have to know what's happening in Miami. We're all one body. And the head feels the pain in every part of the body. Every single one of us has a specific mission. When is the last time that we sat down with ourselves and really went to the depth of our soul by, first of all, taking away the clutter of social media, the clutter of WhatsApp, the clutter of YouTube, the clutter of the news, everything. And we just said, you know what? I'm going to declutter my mind. I'm just going to disconnect for a few hours. And I'm going to think about me. Why did God put me in the world? Why did he put you in the world? How are we contributing to building the world, building God's world, building his foundations? What have I given to the world? How am I holding it up? We have to ask ourselves these questions. God didn't randomly choose us and put us in this world in order to just enjoy, make a little more money. At the end of the day, with all the money you can make in the world, you can't live in 2 houses. You cannot have 2 meals. You can't sleep in 2 beds. It doesn't matter what you have or what you will have. The question is, what are we doing with it? How are we contributing? How are we the channels of Hashem, of God in this world, to bring light and to bring, more specifically, our own light? You have your own light that nobody else in the world can bring. Tonight is going to be my daughter's bat mitzvah. I recall a time that one day a young girl came to see the Rebbe. And she said, tonight is my bat mitzvah. I'm turning 12. It's my birthday. And the Rebbe answered, you know what a birthday is? A birthday is the day that God said the world cannot exist without you. If we are on this planet and we are living at this period in this year, 2021, 5781, we have a specific mission right now. It starts with not fooling ourselves, being really brutally honest with ourselves. And I'm going to say, when I say brutally honest, I mean brutally honest. Not negative, but brutally honest. One day a student wrote to the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidism. And he said, Rebbe, I fell from a very high place to a very low place. And I'm very depressed. What should I do? To these, the Alter Rebbe answered the 2 following answers. Listen carefully. He said, number 1, being depressed will only bring you to sin and to fall again. Even in situations where we are today, we cannot fall into depression. We need to transform our feelings, our brokenness into action. If not, it's just another sigh, another feeling, another way to cover up the call to action. Number 2, says the Alter Rebbe, being brutally honest with the student, he said, you really have nothing to be depressed about because you didn't fall from such a high place to start with. Now, you might think this is a little cruel to say that to somebody, but When we really want the interest of somebody else, we don't sugarcoat something. We tell a person, this is where you're holding. If you want for your foundations to stand strong, you have to know where you are. Because if you fool yourself, you will always be thinking you're somewhere and you will crumble down and you will fall again. It's going to be a life of being just on a roller coaster. Once you know where you are, who you are, what your mission is, and how you are making small steps towards accomplishing this mission and developing and realizing your potential with God's blessings, at that moment you are holding on a path which is solid. You have solid foundations. Finally, he tells him, do not fool others. We live in a world which is so politicized. It's all about fooling somebody else. How I'm going to get you to follow me, and how I'm going to say the right words in order to look good in your eyes. Live the right lifestyle, when really it's possible that inside of me, I might be a miserable person. Don't fool others. You don't have to make things look extraordinary. You could just be silent. You could just be yourself. Because the most beautiful person that you are is yourself. When you are yourself, at that moment, you're not fooling others. The foundation is true. People are looking for emet today. People are desperately looking for truth in a corrupt world where everybody is looking for their interests, where everybody wants to be politically correct. Let's fool others. We're your friends. No, we're not your friends. If you're a terrorist, we're not your friends. Just say the way it is. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Because eventually, God forbid, if what's happening in Israel continues, who knows where we will be tomorrow? We really have to pray for God's mercy. But that's all over the world. It's a one big world of lies. And therefore, don't fool others. And finally, he tells them, don't let others fool you. It seems, to me anyways, that many of us are just walking blindly and just following blindly whatever is told to us. All the sources of information, the media has taken over this world as if it was God. It feels it's God. It feels it can manipulate every single one of us. One day, a minister in Russia said, when Russia was communist, he said, what do you think? America is not a communist country? America is a communist country too. We say it openly. We control everybody and we tell them. But you guys, it's very simple. You use the media to control the masses which don't know better, and they just follow the media. It's another way of communism. Anyways, I'm not going into politics. But I'm just saying that we cannot walk blindly. If you have a gut feeling, use that gut feeling and go for it. Be yourself. I'm not saying you want to speak out, speak out. But at least if you're not going to speak out, stand for yourself. Make your own decisions in life. At a time where we see everything that's happening in the world, it's time to rebuild our foundations. It's time to think, to gather our families and put a stop to certain things that we permit in our families. I'll share with you something that happened many years ago. Many years ago, my kids would look at Facebook and videos on YouTube. And I realized over time that the connection I have with my kids has been lost. My eye-to-eye connection, the human connection is not there. So one day I got so upset and frustrated. I sent a message on the family chat. It was a Friday afternoon. I said, I'm not coming home till everybody here in the house takes upon themselves that if you want to watch social media, anything in social media, it's going to be out of the house. I want my home to have sanity. The foundations of my home cannot be disturbed by the outside world. Mind you, I don't have a television at home. Everybody was upset at me, but I regained my family the day I did that. I'm not saying you should do the same and be as extremist as I was, but at least certain hours of the day, disconnect yourself. Let the inner voice that's inside of you speak to you. Let God tell you it's time for your redemption. It's time for you to accomplish what you were brought in the world to accomplish. It's time for you to rebuild the world. You can do it. We can do it together. If only we're ready to shut ourselves away, to shut down the noise that is disturbing our mission. We don't have the time to be disturbed. We have too much to accomplish in the world. So, to conclude, I would like to tell you the following. The Rebbe, in an address all his life, from since he is 3, but in an address in the years 1990, 91, 92, told us that our generation would be the one that will merit the ultimate redemption with Mashiach. The same words Moses said to the Jewish people in Egypt when they were deaf to his words, the Rebbe told us over 30 years ago. The time has come now. When we are all crushed inside, it's time for us to reveal our essence, to make that quantum leap, to make that pivotal change and reach our true potential. Let's start with something small. Let's start with one action, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day of studying Torah, looking in God's manual on how to build the world, on the 3 pillars of foundation, which are the 3 foundation pillars of the world, which are Torah, the study of Torah, Avodah, prayer, Ugmilud, Chasadim, and loving kindness.